Hello, BookTube. Another Stevestream, a surprise Stevestream. Wasn't sure I was going to do this myself today. Uh, and the culprit is bad. The result will be good because Stevestreams are always fun. But the culprit for why I'm doing it was bad, which is that I broke my own ration for looking at the outside world. I mentioned on a couple of videos this week that I started off the work week yesterday with a surprising amount of work imposed on me, offered to me by the outside world. Paid work, deadline work, adult work, not necessarily put on your pants work because I don't do that because I don't have to leave to do it. Uh, and that was great. And that has caused me to rearrange my work schedule just a bit. I've tried to keep BookTube informed. I've tried to keep my hand in BookTube, and that's what we're going to talk about. But in the midst of doing that, that involved a lot of just sitting with the laptop, a lot of typing, a lot of reading about, a lot of finding people and checking antecedents and precedents and whatnot. And that led me to look at the news, and that is incredibly depressing. That is just an incredibly depressing thing to do. Not just for the ongoing genocide in Gaza. I don't know if you look at the news, you probably shouldn't. The latest atrocity by the IDF, by the Netanyahu government, is that they bombed a hospital. They knew perfectly well what they were doing. They bombed a hospital, and then they waited. They waited 15 minutes, and then they bombed it again. You wait 15 minutes so that people start to evacuate the wounded from the rooms, try and get them out on the street, so that aid workers start to rush in, civilians start to rush in. It's designed to maximize your death count to do that. U.S. forces saw that all the time in the Iraq War. They did it plenty of times in the Iraq War. It is a purely evil thing to do. It is when you are reveling in your bloodthirst. So that there's that. But the main thing that's on my mind, that should be the main thing on my mind, I know. But the main thing that's on my mind is the downfall of my country, which I know it sounds complacent. I never thought that I would live to see it. And the group behind it is absolutely counting on the timidity of the press and the complacency of the public, and they're getting both. They are getting both. And so this is going to happen. This is just going to happen. Exactly what I predicted 8 years ago is going to happen. It's not going to be the rather juvenile scenario of an armed insurrection to overthrow the government at the Capitol and then what? Hold it? It's not going to be that. It's going to be slow and steady the way fascism always does take over a country. It's going to be pushing and pushing and pushing and counting on the disorganization and timidity of your opponents, the forces of freedom. That almost always works. And I don't know, maybe I was telling myself all this time that it wouldn't work here, that it wouldn't work in America, that America had has such a long history of massive discourse-changing public protests. That is what's necessary here. Massive public protests is what's necessary here. Street traffic halting, business shuttering, public protests, sustained and universal, where no one pays their taxes, no one goes to work, no one obeys the law, until all of this is reversed, until your MAGA people get out of our voter registration systems and you get the military off our streets. And that is not going to happen. Now, I know I was privy to Slack conversations between architects of Project 2025 in which they said 10 years ago, that won't happen. Don't let the George Floyd protests fool you. That won't happen. No one will protest against this. The protests will be minimal. They'll be nominal. We can just keep doing what we're doing. We can just keep steadily moving along with what we're doing. And looking at the news and seeing that is just, it got so depressing that I thought you need a Stevestream to perk you up. All of my friends on YouTube have said that Stevestream, live streams always perk you up. They always have for me. And then my first instinct was, well, yeah, do a live stream and talk all about this. That's not going to do any good. That's not going to make me feel any better or anybody else feel any better. So instead, I have a topic, and that topic is BookTube, because that is on my mind as well. August is almost over. The summer is almost over. And that is causing the first tiny trickles of the tide that will eventually wash me out to sea. And that is making me think about BookTube. What is BookTube to you? What is BookTube in 2025 going into 2026? I thought about it in terms of myself, what it is for me. And I thought back to when I was first seeing it and leaving comments on it, but not even thinking that I could join it. And then when I first joined it, I was thinking of my mind frame then, when I had my old girls, when I was going out to work at the paper 3 times a week and had all sorts of pants and whatnot. I was thinking about it then, and I was thinking, when I thought about it then, the first thing that came to my mind is the first thing that gets mentioned in connection with our little corner of BookTube, or any corner of BookTube, which is the word community. I thought about community. I thought, isn't this wonderful? All these people are here to talk about books because they don't have anyone in their real life to talk about books with. Now, that isn't true for me, and it wasn't true then. I thought to myself then, well, do you really belong? They're all here to find community, but you already have a bookish community, a rather large one. So you don't need BookTube for that. But is it possible you need BookTube for itself? Is it possible that you will like this community, especially being an active creator in that community? I thought that, and for a long time I felt that, and that has come and gone over the years, and I have made the last thing in the world that I expected to make, which is real world friendships that don't have anything to do with BookTube. They're not related to BookTube. And that felt great, and that still does feel great, but what about BookTube? The idea of community for me is largely over. I feel that especially acutely on Tuesdays, because Tuesday is Tag Tuesday, and tags are such a fun communal thing. And that feels a little melancholy, a little hollow now to me, considering how many booktubers don't like me. How many of them decided that I'm some sort of bad guy, I guess. I don't know what the rationale is. I only know them by their behaviors. I don't know their thoughts because I'm not going to ask. I wouldn't get an answer anyway. So tags and things like that, even communal events, feel a little bit more, well, melancholy than they used to, but I don't know that that's true for you. I would imagine that most of the people that will be here in this live will not be BookTube creators. You'll be viewers and commenters. And so what is BookTube to you? Is it background noise while you fold laundry or do that specially long recipe? Is it, or is it people? Is it people? I mean, in a lot of cases on BookTube, you don't know the person's name, and they don't want you to know their name. In some cases on BookTube, even in our little corner of BookTube, it's not just that they don't want you to know their name, it's that they don't want you to know what they're like. So they assume a persona on camera. I used to rail against that. I don't rail against it quite so much anymore. Everybody has their own way of doing this, and I'm not the cop of any of it. But I very much don't do it myself. You're welcome to come up to me on the street. You're welcome to come up to me at the Brattle Sale lot. And when people come here to Hyde Cottage for wine and calzones, they universally report that I am more or less exactly the same as I am on camera. So for me, it's not that, but you will know that. You will watch these channels and see that some of them are like that. What does that make this for you? What is BookTube for you? Do you come to it for book recommendations? Do you come to it for checking in on parasocial friends? I mean, there is that, right? This is a parasocial relationship. Most of you, to be honest, will never meet me. I think the parasocial, the fake element of parasocial is a lot thinner on this channel than it is on most channels, because you are pretty much talking to me. I view my BookTube videos as conversations with friends. I treat them exactly that way. I do them exactly like that. And a conversation with me in real life would not be any different. So I'm not really talking about me. I'm really talking about other channels where that's, you know, that's not true, and you know that's never going to happen. What do you go to them for? Even though that's not a personal relationship, it's still a parasocial relationship. Are you going to those channels to check in on that person? So yeah, this person doesn't tell me their name. They have a title for their channel, but not their name. I don't know that they would resist telling me if I asked them, but they don't tell me that. They don't share where they are. They don't share much about their personal life. They only upload once every 2 weeks or something like that. But I feel connected with enough with them to want to know what they're reading or how their reading is going, something like that. I'm just curious to know what BookTube is for you, because now, as the autumn technically begins, I think we're going to have patches of very hot weather here in New England in September. But as autumn technically begins, the sense of it, the popular notion of it, the summer is ending. I'm starting to think about BookTube in larger 30,000-foot terms. I'm starting to think about what I do on BookTube, what I want to do on BookTube, what I get out of BookTube, and what I want to get out of BookTube. I'm starting to think about it in that ways, and that makes me wonder what you think about it. So there's my throat clearing. This cannot be a long Steve stream, so I will go to the top of the comments and see what's on your mind. And if you have thoughts about BookTube, you can email them to me. You don't have to put them in the comments here. So what do we got here for the comments? Sean Patrick is first. Hi Steve, could you recommend a natural history of the American bison? Yes, but I'm not going to be able to help you, because there was a natural history of the American bison. It was actually in mass market paperback 40 years ago, more than that. But I don't remember the author. It will be I don't know how this will help, but I think it was called The Bison, or maybe The Buffalo. It had just that simple a title. It wasn't like Lords of the West or anything like that. And it would be the only natural history of the American buffalo that was ever in a mass market paperback. So if you searched for buffalo, if you went to eBay, for instance, and searched for buffalo mass market paperback, that would be the only one that come up. And it was good. It was really good. Sean Patrick is back. Steve, I've owned 3 beagles, and while they're lovable, kind, and faithful, I've always viewed them as intellectually one of the dim bulbs of the canine world. Am I off base? You are off base. Very much so. You very, very much so. Yeah. They can sometimes seem that way if you look at them from a human point of view, which I'm assuming most people do, because beagles don't automatically obey. They don't automatically even listen. And the human-centric view of an animal, any animal, but especially a dog, will be that if I tell you to do something, you don't even seem to listen, you must be dumb. When no, beagles are the exact opposite of the dim bulbs of the dog world. Good Lord. Tolstoy 111, give the guy some time to say hello. Oh, did the comments start early? Sean Patrick says, he'll get no mercy from me. Think about all he has done to David Murphy's liver. Oh, for Pete's sake. David Murphy does plenty of damage to David Murphy's liver without me. He's not a poor little victim. Where has he been for the last 3 days? At the Minnesota State Fair. Minnesota State Fair is a teetotaling affair? Ridiculous. His liver can look out for itself. Alexandra says, feel so depressed and sad today. Fascism is in the U.S. Yeah, okay, we're on the same page then. I was almost praying for a Steve stream. We had the exact same kind of day then, it sounds like. James and the Giant Niche says, oh boy, another Steve stream to butcher my beauty sleep. Oh, if you need your beauty sleep, or any kind of sleep, you people, if it was beauty sleep, you would all be gorgeous, considering how much of it you get. Clarence says, you never talk about cozy literature. No, I don't usually talk about cozy literature. You're right. Hugo, well, I don't know a lot of these names. How many strangers are here? A Steve stream always makes my day. Well, you aren't a stranger then. Monet Doyle says, hello. Caden is here. Hi, Steve. I just finished Liam O'Flaherty's The Informer based off your top 5 Irish novel recommendation. His prose took some getting used to for me, but overall I liked it. I'm glad you liked it. Monet Doyle is back. All over the news, they are talking about Taylor Swift's engagement. Why? I'll tell you why, Monet. Because the American press has the attention span of a little baby kitten. When this era of the downfall of free United States is written, there'll be all sorts of traitors to talk about, all sorts of evil people. But the number one fault, I think, will be laid at the foot of the American press, and it will rightfully belong there. So Donald Trump is pretty much a confirmed repeat child rapist. He wanted that story to be out of the news, and sure enough, just dangle something shiny in front of the American press, and they'll talk about anything you want. Anything you want. Caden says, also, I found a copy of Elizabeth Bones last September for cheap at my local used bookstore. Is this a good place to start with her, or should I start somewhere else? It's fine. With anyone who is a very, very talented short story writer, I often suggest starting with the short stories. Start with a few of them, just to know if you like how the author behaves on the page. But The Last September will work fine, sure. The context of that reply being Elizabeth Bowen is one of the great short story writers. So Manny says, I've been immersed in Livy's early history of Rome lately. Oh boy, what a storyteller this guy is. Yes. Someone very kindly brought over bookcases a couple of weeks ago, and their car was full of books. One of the books was a battered Penguin trade paperback of the early history of Rome, the Albert de Salincourt translation. And I didn't need any books. I told myself I'm not going to even look in these bags. But that one was right on top, and I asked, and I got it. And I thought, okay, well, you have it, but you're certainly not going to spend any time reading it. And then I did. Yeah, Livy is wonderful. Brandon says, I can't imagine MAGA will love to have Vance as president. They will, absolutely. Well, the MAGA base might not, but the MAGA base isn't going to believe that Donald Trump isn't president, no matter what. The media, before it went on to Taylor Swift, the shiny object of Taylor Swift, the shiny object that diverted it from the fact that the president of the United States is a confirmed repeat child rapist was Donald Trump's health. That was the shiny object that was dangled in front of them. People were wondering. Talking heads on CBS News in the morning shows were saying, it's awful odd that he hasn't taken any trouble to make a better job with the makeup on his hand. It's almost like he wants us to see it. Yeah, you're almost there, Seymour. Donald Trump is going to live until 2047. As I said to you 10 years ago, he's going to die in his bed in the residence of the Oval Office. But the base won't like it. But the movement behind MAGA, Project 2025, is openly fascist. They are openly fascist theocrats. And a key element of fascism is the merging of the mercantile system with the government. So they won't mind J.D. Vance at all. Aslan says, to me, BookTube is solely Steve Johnny. I promise I wasn't fishing for that kind of answer. I promise I wasn't. Monet says, I have picked up different romance books, but nobody on BookTube are reading them. Well, there are dedicated romance readers on BookTube, but there are a lot of romances out there. There's not many booktubers who talk romance books. I haven't got any good recommendations lately. It's hit or miss with the recommendation business. I agree. Oh, the chat jumped already. All right, let's go back to Monet. There we go. Aslan says, I have no one in real life to talk about books with in a way that is not pretentious. Yeah. Young people, I don't know how young you are, but young people are especially vulnerable to that. Usually the only book talk will be from, pretentious hipsters going to the well, actually. So BookTube is that for you. Leo says, BookTube is the only place I can talk about books with people because there's nobody in real life who I know reads, even considers reading. Something someday when I tell them I like reading. Okay. Well, I imagine that's going to be the answer for a lot of people. So it's a kind of book. It isn't actually a conversation because you're watching videos, but it's a kind of. You're listening to people talk about books. Choco says, yay, Steve and Frida. Frida's right here. She's over on her chair. Alexander says, BookTube is a bookish home for me. But what does that mean? You're saying it. I think you're meaning to imply that it's a wonderful, warm, welcoming place. But I'm Boston Irish Catholic, so it doesn't connote that for me. So what does that mean? The Big Shep, I've been thinking about starting a channel myself, but I imagine I too would rapidly make myself into a BookTube villain, a leper, one might say, a pariah. Well, I didn't make myself that way at all. I don't know where it comes from. It certainly doesn't originate from a month ago. When somebody makes a totally cynical, lying video about how you listen, kid. Here are some things you got to understand, and one of them is, no matter how many times you do X, Y, or Z, you're never going to get any better at it. That's why when you're on your couch and you're hungry and you want to get food in the kitchen, you have to crawl on your belly to the kitchen because no matter how many times you practice walking, you never got any better at it. And no matter how many times you try making a video, you're never going to get any better at it. Like anyone has ever experienced that being true of anything. Someone says, it's really tough. No one watches. No one cares. Okay, when somebody makes a video like that about making BookTube videos, something that I have done more than anyone on earth, my status on BookTube, whatever it is, of not being liked by BookTubers, doesn't generate from them. The one Discord server that I know of that is exclusively dedicated to bitching and moaning about me predates that whole fiasco. So I don't know what it is. I have no idea. I know I'm not a cuddly reader. I know that. And I know BookTube has plenty of cuddly readers. But I would think that wouldn't do it, since plenty of those cuddly readers have come here and made videos with me. So it's obvious they don't. Anyway, this isn't going to be about me. It's going to be about you. Aslan says, BookTube is also a way for me to see what the reading community thinks about this or that book. It's a way to know the lay of the land. Oh, how interesting. Okay. Leo says, the channels I watch sometimes take my recommendations and I take theirs. It is slow going, but it kind of works. There's a small connection. Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's better than I thought. Westfield Space Academy Agency, sorry. I listen to BookTube videos for inspiration about books and reading. Also see what people say about books. I love to hear about books that may not be on my radar. Okay. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I feel that the surly houseboy has been punching bag for far too long. We need him to do a video of his own, and we can determine his level of surliness. He will never do a video of his own. At least you're acknowledging that he's real. At least you're doing that. People have seen him. He is real. He doesn't always hide under the couch and hiss at strangers when they come to the place. I remember once, years and years ago, in some sort of comments field, I think it was, Sarah, reading category romance. She'd been here and she'd seen my surly houseboy, and in some sort of comments field, the subject came up, and people were saying, "Yeah, he's not real. Steve's just doing a comedy bit." And she left a comment saying, "Guys, I've seen him. He's real." And someone was unwise enough to leave a comment saying, "Well, you might be lying." So you don't want to pick a fight with Sarah. Okay. Hugo says, I just got a copy of Kalki at a secondhand bookshop, and I'm wondering if that is a Gore Vidal title worth reading. No, but he would have said all Gore Vidal titles are worth reading in order to preserve the Republic. So read and see what you think. Some critics liked it. Sean Patrick, Steve, what was Twain's beef with Jane Austen? I can tell you that. You won't believe it, but I can tell you what his beef was. And it developed over time. He didn't have that beef in his early years. It developed over time when he knew that he also was a giant in literature. It was simple jealousy. That's all. Simple jealousy. I don't believe it was a real beef either. But the Big Shep says, for one part, I'm reading Mistborn and I'm not liking it much at all. And I fear I could only make that my first video if I ended it with my crucifixion. But I suppose fame always has a price. Well, there are plenty of people on BookTube who don't like Mistborn. You'd be fine. I don't think that it's controllable either way. I know perfectly well that I could be a cuddly booktuber if I wanted. If that is the ultimate source of why so many booktubers, especially UK booktubers, don't like me because they think I'm mean, infantile. If that is the ultimate reason, and that is the oldest reason, so that may be the ultimate reason, well, what am I supposed to do? I am under the impression that reading is for adults. The kind of reading I do is for adults. I could do it easily. I'm an old man. I could easily be a cuddly old man. Anyway, Hugo says, I'm a stranger to you, but you're not a stranger to me. I've watched so many of your streams and videos, but don't really comment. Oh, well, that is the kind of dichotomy that is endemic to a parasocial relationship. Although I'd like to think that, okay, you're a stranger to me, but the me that is not a stranger to you is me. You're not seeing a performance here. Andrew says, I'm cautiously looking forward to Maggie Nelson's next book, A Study of Sylvia Plath and Taylor Swift. Better, well, that makes one of us. Tolstoy 111 says, hi, Steve. Do you like The Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes? Not particularly, no. Reading All the Books says, I've just started my channel this week. I haven't done a lot yet. Oh, wow. I'll have to, you'll be buried in the chat. I'll never remember to find you. I'll have to remember that name. I enjoy listening to people talk about their love of books, their favorites, etc. I miss having someone to talk about books with every day. Oh, all right. So it's a kind of conversation. And you made your channel, I presume, along those lines. Cole says, hey, Steve, I'm still very much a literature rookie in comparison to most of the people here. And I've loved H.G. Wells' sci-fi recently. Anybody you'd have me piggyback to off him? It would depend on what you like about his sci-fi. There's no way... it's not programmatic. So there's no way I could say, well, if you like Wells, then you'll like so-and-so. The natural recommendation would be either Jules Verne in English language translation or the Barsoom novels of Edgar Rice Burroughs, but I'd like to know what you're liking about him, because there might be someone considerably later that you would like. Steven says, I feel like that is an insult to kittens, and I am a dog person saying that. I don't know what the context is of an insult to kittens. So I'm just going to have to leave it. Oh, the chat jumped. Oh, there we go. Colombian Thunder says, hey, Steve, not necessarily book related, but just starting watching Columbo for the first time. Are you a fan? I'm certainly a fan of the tribute channel on YouTube. Oh, my God. What's it called? Watching for Days? Something like that, for days, where she analyzes every Columbo episode. She's only barely started. Those videos are so good. Is it binging or watch for days, something like that? I don't remember the exact name, but I'm subscribed, so I eagerly wait for every new video. They must take a huge amount of work to do, so I'm not angry that there aren't many. But the Columbo story itself, the show itself, I don't know if a fan is the right word. It's so saturated in tobacco addiction. It's just saturated in that. Not just him, everybody, and also it's very clever. It's a very pulpy show. But if you take a step back and look at some of the incredibly tenuous gotcha conclusions to the episode, you realize that the person that Columbus gets with his gotchas would walk out of court singing a tune. There's no evidence, basically no evidence against him. So as far as a convincing police procedural, no. I'm not really a fan. No, they are entertaining to watch. Plus, I remember the era, and a lot of younger people won't. So I'd be curious to know, for instance, the young woman that does Watch for Days or whatever it is, she doesn't remember the 70s at all. She wasn't born then. So there's an added element for me. Let's see here. Where are we here? Clarence says, are we proper Fenians given we read so much Tudor and Victorians? Yeah. Sean Patrick is back. Steve, I'm no proponent of buying purebred dogs. Good. You shouldn't be. But that might be because I live near a lot of Amish people who get caught running horrendous puppy mills. Plus, there aren't so many dogs in shelters. Yeah, there are puppy mills all over. And also, if you get a dog from a breeder, it's going to be a something doodle, like every other dog in the world. Now, no, go to a shelter. Go to many shelters. I know that some shelters can be obnoxious. They can be incredibly judgmental and exclusion, but not all of them. Go to many. I assume you have a car, so go to a few. Definitely save a dog's life rather than go to a breeder. Definitely. James and the Giant Niche is back. As a viewer, I like BookTube for the discussions. Doesn't matter the book, just happy to hear people's thoughts. As a new channel, I'm still trying to figure out how to participate in tag/events. So you're another new channel. You people need to be sending me links, emailing me your links. Sean Patrick says, Steve, could you recommend a good book on the history of Sicily? Well, there is a really good book on Persephone's Island, and there's a lot of history of Sicilian history in there, but it's mainly a travel book. I don't know of any. I've read a couple of histories of Sicily because I used to live there. Briefly, for just about a little less than a year, I lived there. I've read a couple of histories, but they were deadly dull. I don't even remember the details. One was fairly big, and it wasn't good at all. It was just mercilessly boring. On Persephone's Island is a good book to start with, anyway. And I think it references a lot of history books. You might be able to go from there. Let's see here. James says BookTube. Okay, I don't know what that's about. Rena is reading is here. I watch different people for different reasons. That's what I was kind of expecting everybody would say, but instead it's been largely the same. The impersonal ones I tend to watch for entertainment, but yeah, our corner I watch to check in on people. Others just because they don't read like me. There's a big difference between this little ecosystem where people are more genuine and the bigger YouTube system where there's an ad and then there's another ad. Those two at the beginning are not skippable. And then the person starts with I got a board just in from Reno, patter, and that goes on for another 5 minutes. And then there's the pitches and the calls to action. That's another 5 minutes. Then I've got kind of a subject I want. And they're tapping the papers on the desk, and Ed McMahon is getting ready on the side. Yeah, with them you would watch for entertainment if they're entertaining. You certainly wouldn't watch it for personal connection. Colombian Thunder says Trump just said people would like him to be a dictator. It baffles my mind how so many people just cover their ears about this and still don't believe he's a fascist. Yeah, 8 years ago. Yeah, he has not said. When he says many people are saying, he means I am saying. He doesn't talk to many people. Doesn't talk to anybody. And he said many people are asking for a dictator. That means he is planning on becoming a dictator, and he was clear about that almost a decade ago. And like I said, the things that are necessary here are a complacent, ill-informed public and a lapdog press. And Project 2025 and Stephen Miller are getting both of those. Colin says, "Hey Steve, what is the greatest comprehensive book about the Irish Troubles?" Well, there are the single greatest. I don't know. I always recommend Tim Pat Coogan. His books are popular. They're written for a popular audience, but they're quite good. So they're a good place to start. Sean Patrick says, "Is it fair to say one gets more from a reread based on the greater number of years between the readings?" Not in my experience with other people. With me, yes, but with other readers, most other readers that I know, even really good readers, are completely aphasic when it comes to what they read. In a year, they remember literally nothing about the books that they have read. In 10 years, no, they don't even remember whether they've read it or not. It's like this rolling amnesia. I've never understood that. In all my time as a reader, I've never understood that. So with most people, it wouldn't matter how long the time is because they've forgotten it anyway. But, with me, yes, very much so. Lindsay Reed says, "BookTube has been such a joy in my life, constantly bringing books to my attention, inspiring my reading choices, and such warm bookish company with real readers." Oh, that's wonderful to hear. That is wonderful. Alexandra says, "LOL, I am Northern German Lutheran. My outlook is probably as bleak. A bookish home. I come to the same people daily, weekly, monthly. I comment. I learn from them. I feel like you are my friends." Oh, and look at that. Look at how the rest of you, look at how easy it was for Alexander to include the context, so that I'm not wondering what she's referring to. All she had to do was a bookish home. That's all, and then full colon. Alexandra gets how to keep Steve in the loop. That's wonderful, and that is. I feel like you are my friends. That is wonderful. The kind of channels I think you're talking about welcome that. Maybe none of them welcome it as fervently and directly as I do, which makes the irony even greater that so much of BookTube thinks I'm the devil incarnate. But still, a lot of them do welcome that. Colombian Thunder says, "Wherever you start on BookTube, it all in one way or another leads to Steve." I don't believe that. I don't believe that. Eric Reviews made a point of saying in one of his videos that if you make more than 3 videos a day, YouTube stops promoting them. So I'd like to think that's not true. Steven says, "I watch BookTube for suggesting. Michael K. Vaughan's love for Robert E. Howard got me to read him." Many people have thought that. Aslan says, "I find that too much of BookTube is touchy-feely. Everyone is right and everything is subjective." I won't go into a rant. I want to hear your answers. Sean Patrick says, "Steve, I find reading in a hammock incredibly relaxing. The main problem is the backyard animals relax and start to come around, and I start watching them instead of reading." Well, I can't read in a hammock, obviously. I wouldn't do it anyway. Despite that wonderful painting by Norman Rockwell, it is typically impossible to get a beagle to lay in a hammock with you and read. That's why I love that painting. But hammocks are also, now that I'm 100 million years old, I couldn't get into one and I couldn't get out of one if I got into one. So, but I'm in your same boat. If I were to do that, like for instance, in a chair on a porch and the backyard wildlife were to start coming around, I would stop reading and just watch. Steve Ronstein says, "I read and watch BookTube so I can be privy to what's going on in Stevestream. If these ever end, it's back to doom scrolling." Jimbo says, "Do all the customer reviews floating around on the internet make it hard for people these days to make a living as a book reviewer?" Well, no, I really think not. Apparently, it's very hard to make. Well, it's almost impossible to make a living as a book reviewer. Let's put it that way. But if you mean get any spare change as a book reviewer in like a traditional venue, no, they have always had a spot for that, and they always want to have a spot for that. And there are fewer and fewer of those just because the whole venue shuts down. But it's not a question of all the free reviews floating around, because most of those are bad. Most of those are dumb. They're not reviews at all. They're how I react to a book. I read this thing and this is how it made my stomach feel. Well, that's not a book review. And there are enough readers out there, critical readers out there, to want a book review, not just that. But to make a living as a book reviewer is virtually impossible. Virtually impossible. As a freelancer, you can get piece after piece after piece, and you can do well, but you could also do poorly. You could have a month where nobody returns your answers. I often say that there are only a tiny handful of people in the United States right now who make a living, who live doing book reviews and nothing else. There's only a tiny handful of those. I'm one of them, but I think the number would fit in this room. Manny says, I've also been reading T.J. Binion's biography of Pushkin that you mentioned in a video a while back, and what an incredibly lively biography. So what a pair, Livy and Binion. Binion is really good. He's well worth reading. Colin says, what's your opinion of William Bowman? Is Argyll worth reading? Argyll is worth reading, and I like Bowman. Caden says, I second the sentiment that BookTube is for this particular young person to hear people talk about books without the well actually crowd. Yeah, you'll get precious little of that, and if you it won't be hard for you to curate a subscription list of channels in this little corner of BookTube that never do that. Never. Which again underscores the irony of thousands of UK booktubers thinking that that's all I ever do. They've never watched a video of mine. They take one look at the thumbnail of my face and think, oh, I know what this guy's like. When that is not only alien to what I do, but I hate it. I actively mock it. It's just, I have learned to make my peace with the fact that when you're online, some people are going to dislike you without any factual basis at all. You like to think there's a factual basis that, okay, I do this and that person doesn't like that, so definitely that's the reason why, and that makes a kind of sense. But no, it's not that. There won't be a factual reason. Westfield is back. I've thought of starting a BookTube channel after I retire in a few years. You don't know that you're going to retire in a few years. You don't know you're going to be alive in a few years. If you're thinking about it, I would try it. Gandhi says, Nicholas Boggs' biography of Baldwin is marvelous. Oh, that makes two of us. Good for you. And then the chump chat. So we were at Gandhi. That's an easy name to remember. We'll just scroll back up. Good Lord, how many people are here? Leo says, Steve, do you have a favorite submarine book and or movie? Well, there's a big, fat history of submarine warfare during World War II. I love that. The Silent War. That is a great book. As far as movies go, well, I love the final 10 minutes of U-571, of course, like any normal person. I love those final 7 minutes. But in terms of a movie, no, not really. Maybe it's U-571, just the whole thing. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I read Chambers' The King and in Yellow and liked it. What a weird, creepy work. Does it really have as much influence on later horror writing as some booktubers say it does? Well, the horror tubers would know better than I would. I've never seen that influence. I know I've heard that said long before there was an internet. I heard people saying that. If you're going to say that about later horror fiction, you should be able to produce a bumper crop of horror writers who know the work. And you can't. So I don't see how it could have an effect on them. Maybe supernaturally. Aslan says, I'm currently reading When We Cease to Understand the World. What did you make of it? I'm not a fan. Aslan says, I love Jules Verne. Colin says, what's your opinion of Isaac Asimov? I tried reading Foundation and found it very boring. Well, he wrote a lot of different kinds of stuff. So it could be just that the science fiction in the Foundation books, which is, in my opinion, not that good. I know that's heretical to say. If that's what you didn't like about it, well, then you might like him better in other things. You never know. Try some of his nonfiction. He wrote a mountain of it. I'm assuming that's what you mean. What is my opinion of Isaac Asimov's books? I'm assuming that's what you mean, not the man. Steven says, their attention span. Okay, out of context. Sean Patrick says, Steve, did you like Darren McGavin's short-lived show, Kolchak the Night Stalker? Did I like Kolchak? Is that what you're asking me? Well, at least you didn't ask whether or not I've ever heard of it. Yes, I love Kolchak, of course, as any civilized person does. I love Kolchak. I think the shows themselves maybe get a little thinner, substance-wise, the further along they go. But the first one, show me someone who's going to watch that and not love it. A couple of the later ones, just the first one. I believe the first one is free on YouTube. Yes, I'm a Kolchak fan. Yes. Colin says Peter Falk was an incredible actor and gave a hell of a performance. I don't see that. I don't know if when you say a hell of a performance, you're talking about Columbo. If you're talking about Columbo, you're just wrong. He's not giving a hell of a performance there, for Pete's sake. He's not giving a hell of a performance in those episodes. But he's good. Absolutely, he's good. A hell of a performance as an actor in Columbo. Think about other detective shows, even of the period, where the lead actor is giving a hell of a performance. Anyway, Dylan Mathias has recently branched out to watching more booktubers, starting with Joe Spivey. That's a terrible place to start with. Good Lord, it's so exhausting. I come to BookTube for the personalities. I have people I talk books with, but I enjoy our parasocial relationships too. Okay. Yeah, I keep meaning to branch out to a lot more BookTube. My typical way of doing that in the past was just to subscribe to everyone who does a BookTube newbie channel, the BookTube newbie tag. But so many of them never make another video. So many of them do. I guess because, you're doing this thing, kid. It's never going to get any easier. It's never going to be any fun. You're never going to like it. No one's ever going to watch your videos. No matter how many people say, I watched this all the way to the end. I just don't believe it. I'm imagining things. Well, you've got people out there saying this is a racket. It's all a popularity contest. No one likes it. It's a horrible grind. It's a ton of work for no benefit at all. No wonder that a lot of those people who make the BookTube newbie tag never make another video. Let's see here. Aslan says Columbo smokes too much for Steve to like him. Well, it's not just that. It's not just that. But God Almighty, everyone, all the men in that show. Anyway, Aiden says, I've found BookTube recently, and although I've had real life bookish friends, I've been enjoying how personable everybody is. This part of BookTube has a way of weeding out pretension. It's one of the things that I love, even though a lot of the channels in this little part of BookTube don't like me for no reason whatsoever. Still, in this little part of BookTube, a lot of them do. And even the ones who don't like me, one of the reasons I like them and watch their channels, even though they not only don't watch my channel, but actively urge people not to watch my channel, actively preach against my channel. Even though that's true, the reason I still watch their channel is because of exactly that, because this corner of BookTube is not pretentious. It's the one thing that unites us all, is that it's not pretentious. Ann P says, there are probably 2 booktubers where I've been commenting every now and then, and I think they recognize me. I like that. Otherwise, I love listening to people talking about books I will never read. Do you really? That's come up a few times. That's an interesting thing to like. Andrew says, after his Crumb bio, Dan Nadel's next subject is going to be Jack Kirby. Will you be giving that a miss too? I won't be giving it a miss, but I will be its only negative critic. I'm sure I will be. I don't know anything about the book, but I'm assuming from his book on Crumb that he's going to lie about Jack Kirby with no one to contradict him. So I will review it, and I will tell the truth. If he says that Jack Kirby created the modern age of Marvel Comics, and that there was some kid emptying ashtrays at the end of the hall named Stan, what was his name? Stan Lee, who did barely anything. Well, I imagine that's what the book is going to be, and that's false. That is factually false. So, Must Read More says, I liked the first season and a half of Columbo a lot. Then it started feeling a bit repetitive, and I lost interest. Yeah, I myself tend to like the show once it gains momentum. Once Peter Falk has a better sense of Columbo. I like the fact that Columbo is not armed. I like the fact that he is representing the police department. So if you do anything to him, you're doing something to the police department, which you're not going to do. Obviously, you're not going to do that. That sentimentality is gone from propaganda. Sean Patrick says, Steve, are there any good biographies of Henry Luce? What was your general opinion of him? There was an excellent biography of him. But mainly there have been great biographies of Claire Booth Luce. And I don't have really an opinion about him. Just seemed to me, third hand, admittedly uninformed as an odious person, but I could be wrong about that. I've mostly read about Claire. Studio Set says, book chat clubs are a great place to talk to other people about books. Steve, your thoughts on book clubs in general? I like them. I would love to have one that met here. Oh, that would be so much fun. To have a book club that meets here every week over wine and calzones, that would be so much fun. But I don't want to deal with the politics of it. So much of getting a book club that works right. This is why the people who get a book club that works well, they stick with it for decades. So much of getting that is trial and error. You don't know what you're going to get. And if you're in my house as my guest, I can't snap a rolled up newspaper across your nose, and I should be able to. Because if you're behaving poorly in a book club, you should be told that. I would love, there are plenty that work out of the Boston Public Library, but that would require putting on pants and going to them. I'm sure that's worth it to do. Westfields is back. Would it be faster if Robert Caro finished A Song of Ice and Fire and George R. R. Martin finished the LBJ biography? Neither one of them is going to finish either book. They don't, as I've said many times before, none of you believe this, they don't even think about it. It never crosses their mind. Any of you who are writers out there will know that means a book is dead. But anyway, DP says, hey, Steve, what do you think of the Oxford U.S. History series? I like it a lot. A lot. I read The Glorious Cause recently and thought it was pretty good overall, but the writing got pretty dry at times. Some of them do. They're huge books and they're covering huge periods of time, but some of them, oh my. The Glorious Cause, I agree. Middlecoff can get a little bit lost in himself, but try another volume. Just pick a time period that interests you and try another volume. A lot of them are just wonderful. Monet is back. I couldn't join a book club because I wouldn't want to talk romance books with other people. Well, why not? I should think you would want to. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I read Orwell's often maligned Keep the Aspidistras Flying and found it often poignant and very human, especially compared to his two dystopian behemoths. Yeah, his now neglected stuff because of the two behemoths is often very good. James the Giant Niche says, I just finished reading 1984 and found it beautiful and engrossing. At the risk of sounding cliche, it was really hard to get through it without drawing comparisons to Trump every other page. It's not cliche. It's not cliche. If you think that's cliche, try reading Evans's book on the rise of the Third Reich. As I've said to many people who've then gone on to read it, the only thing that's different is the proper names. That is not Trump derangement syndrome. That is not my imagination. It's the only thing you can think about, even when you're not expecting to think about it. But I'm glad you liked it. That's great. Wasn't it 1984 that I shamed Daniel the Guilty Feet into reading? Because I said that he was mentally undressed if he hadn't read it, and then he read it and really liked it. Wasn't it him? Can't remember. Colombian Thunder says, I already know what you're going to say, but I did start BookTube watching with your enemies. Better Than Food, Daniel Green, Leaf by Leaf. I now only watch you, Michael K. Vaughan, and Alana Estelle. And aren't you happier that way? It's not mind control. It's not Steve controlling your mind. Aren't you happier listening to people who actually mean what they say? I would think you would. Sean Patrick says, Steve, in your experience with writers over the years, what has done more damage, drugs or alcohol? Well, alcohol is a drug. But in terms of drugs or alcohol, it's tobacco. Far and away. Worse than anything. Second would be alcohol, but tobacco, most of all. Samwise is here. Greetings, Steve. I'm finishing up Cuba Fruit, and boy, is this a bizarre book. Should have seen it in its first draft. Yes, it is a bizarre book. I'm hoping that someday, 50 years from now, when Alex is famous and has every award in the world, that the original cut, as it were, the Snyder cut of Cuba Fruit gets released to the public. But it is a bizarre book, intentionally. It is a bizarre book. I'm hoping you're enjoying it. Ki Eso. Hi, Steve. Hi, everyone. Samwise says, could you give a brief summary of your thoughts on Cuba Fruit? No, I could not. I cannot be brief on the book I love so much. An author I love so much. I could not possibly do that. No. I just hope you're enjoying it. Oh, did the chat jump? Yes. The chat jumped. Samwise is who we were talking to. So we just jump back up to him. Oh, good Lord, I'll get all these people. Kai is back. I started watching BookTube to learn how to describe my novel to others and what sort of readers would like my work. After a while, like Alexandra, people I watch regularly feel like my friends. DP says, I read Leslie Marchand's Byron biography this year from your recommendation alongside the Penguin Byron collected poetry, which made for a pretty fun reading experience. Marchand is really good. Whether you read the 1-volume abridgment or the 3-volume set, he's really good. Kai is back, especially after I learned that commenting helps their channels. It's been very nice. DZGIN says, is your favorite Spider-Man by Dan Slott, and do you recommend Silver Surfer by him? Silver Surfer by him gets a little creepy because it is so obviously autobiographical. It is so obviously what we call an author insert, so much of it. And it's also way too trippy for me. I realize with the Silver Surfer, it's difficult to give him an adventure that isn't that, but still. But his Spider-Man, I really like. I know I shouldn't. I'm told by the neck-bearded quasi-fascist that he's a bad guy. But from the documentary that I saw about him, he's also a babyish lunatic. But I like those stories a lot. Mandy says, has T.J. Binion written any other books worth reading besides his Pushing biography? Yeah. Siva Bernstein says, what do you think about what Newsom is doing? What do you mean by what he's doing? Redrawing California's electoral maps or mocking Trump? It's pointless either way. Newsom thinks that he's going to run for president and win in 2028. So he must be a lunatic. He must be an imbecile. I honestly don't. I depend on what you're talking about on what he's doing. Colin says, do you have any recommended books about the Jamestown colony? Are the journals of Captain John Smith worth reading? The journals are worth reading. And there was a book about Jamestown. Oh, God. It was famous. Famous as a book gets. Oh, what was it? I can see the cover, a little cameo of I don't remember the name of it. I don't have a recommendation for you, no. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I had a co-worker strongly recommend Guy Gavriel Kay. I have almost zero experience with historical fantasy. Do you recommend? Read Tigana. If you don't like Tigana, you'll know that you're not going to like the author. So do that. Read Tigana. That Must Read More is back. I loved Kolchak since I was a kid and only recently found out about the movies. They were awesome. Kolchak and Tony Vincenzo are two of my favorite characters ever. Yes, but think back to the idea of them being a buddy routine on the road is ridiculous. I mean, fans loved it, and that's why it happened. But now imagine Kolchak rebooted. Sends a shiver down your spine, doesn't it? Colombian Thunder, Peter Falk is mostly playing himself in Columbo, but I do enjoy him on screen regardless. You know, I've always heard that. I've always heard people say he's just playing himself on screen. And I don't see it. He wasn't anything like Columbo in real life. He wasn't anything like Columbo. He was far more eloquent, far more thoughtful, far more bitchy, far more personal, far more argumentative. I've always heard people say he's just playing himself, and yet it's not Peter Falk on the screen. So I don't understand that. Samwise is back. What do you think of the novels of Janie Wirtz? I have some friends who love her work, but I found her thesaurus-like prose made it difficult to enjoy. I've always found it to be very starchy, very much. You need to be this tall to enjoy this ride, that sort of thing. I know that's probably unpopular opinion, but she doesn't do it for me. Her fantasy has never done it for me. I wanted to like it, very much so. When those big, she's never done it for me, and I understand what you mean by her prose. Westfield Space Agency is back. I need to leave the Stevestream to go finish the book I'm reading, Volume 4 of the History of Middle-earth. Well, we need to leave the Stevestream anyway. 10 past the hour. This is not going to be a long Stevestream. I think there are 17 people here. Am I reading that right? Seems like a lot more than 17 people. Colin says, what do you think of the ITV Sherlock Holmes series starring Jeremy Brett? I loved it, as did everybody else. Mark says, I've been spending a lot of time with the Brands and Morris TR biographies. TR sounds like he was guilty of every single conversational sin that you rally against. Yeah, but you loved him for it. H.P. Lovecraft is, great to catch you again live, Steam. Still catching on the 100 biographies that you did a few years ago. I would love a new edition, or maybe half, because it took a lot of work. Oh, okay, I'm parsing this a little, but what do you mean a new edition? I could do another list of 100 biographies that you should read, but also a lot of work. Do I seem like I'm working hard in that video? I assure you, it did not take a lot of work to do. Ask anybody who's been here for wine and calzones. Or with memoirs. Okay, well, I could do that with memoirs. True. Tolstoy 111 says, in case anyone doesn't know, Columbo was based on, oh God, okay. Book Supreme says, I'm about to read Ronald McNair Scott's Robert the Bruce. I think you've mentioned it. I'm excited to get into it. Good luck. Street Medic says, have you written any blurbs lately? Well, of the type I think you're talking about the kind where the publisher comes to me and says, could you give us a blurb for a book? That hasn't happened recently. No. Ben blurbed on a bunch of books in 2025, but the old-fashioned way where they pluck something out of a review, but not the other way. No, not. I don't think it's happened in 2025. Colin says, did you ever enjoy Dick Cavett? Of course. His show, I assume you mean. I've recently been watching some of his interviews on YouTube and found them very entertaining. His interview with Kurosawa was a joy. He's great. He's great. Those of you who don't maybe think you wouldn't want to watch an old talk show, find some of the stuff on YouTube and watch it for free. You'll change your mind. Andrew says, I saw your comment on the Quillette channel. Softball interviews seem to be their specialty. You saw my comment on that video? I'm all over YouTube. You start looking, you'll see my comments on lots of places. Hugo says, I have recently fallen in love with Yukio Mishima's works and want to know the best biography of him because I find his life very strange and fascinating. I've only read one biography of him. I'm sure there are some in Japanese that I don't know about and they've never been translated. I've heard rumors that there is a large one in Japanese that's never been translated. I read a relatively short biography of him in English that was terrible. So I'm waiting for a gigantic, great English language translation or a new one in English. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I absolutely love Brideshead Revisited. The book or the miniseries? I'm assuming the book. The only other WA I currently own is Vile Bodies, Decline and Fall. Which should I choose next? Either one of those is fine. There's a split thinking of WA you will find in the literary world. The pretentious literary world, let's leave them out. But the actual readers, there's a split thinking on WA. One is that Brideshead Revisited is much better than anything else he wrote. And the other is that Brideshead Revisited is a bit of pandering nostalgia, and it's the worst thing he ever wrote. You're going to have to read more of them to figure out which camp you belong in. SM30 says, do you think reading the Norton Anthology for World Literature is a good starting point for a late reader interested in the classics? Sure, provided you pick the right Norton Anthology. It has to be an early edition. It has to be before the Norton anthologies were ideologically compromised, so that you know you are reading great works of literature. There is no alternate canon. And about 15 years ago, the Norton anthologies and every other anthology started presenting an alternate canon. There is no alternate canon. There is no alternate canon. So when they're shunting out Euripides in order to give you fragments from not even Sappho, but someone who have two lines in the Greek anthology, that is not responsible. That is creating an anthology that is deeply, deeply deceptive and deceitful. So the Norton Anthology of World Literature is a great place to start, sure, but you have to pick an earlier edition where that isn't happening. Albert Goldfrain says, picked up some of the volumes of Morrison's Naval History based on your haul. Do you recommend any World War II prerequisite reading or dive right in? A prerequisite? No. To Morrison? No, not at all. Dive right in. If you're worried, take my usual approach and go to the Wikipedia entry for whatever thing he's writing about in that volume. But you don't need more than that. No. Colin says, what do you think of Marvel Comics, The Untold Story? I didn't like it all that much. And I don't believe a lot of what I read in it. Kevin Jan says, reading Throat Sprockets now. Just finished Riders of the Purple Sage. Finished Library Hellebore, which I disliked. Guess I don't jive with modern readers. Steve Bronstein says, my son's 9th grade English book list for the year is The Crucible, American-Born Chinese, Romeo and Juliet, and Fahrenheit 451. What do you think? One of these things is not like the other. Hannah's Books is here. I loved watching my mother do her Columbo act, walk towards the door, turn around, say just one more thing. I, Sam Wise, is back. Steve, I read Dan Jones' biography on Henry V earlier this year. I've heard you praise his work. Should I read Essex Dogs and another history book from him? Well, I'm assuming that you liked his Henry V book. You shouldn't miss Essex Dogs. Keeping in mind that he knows exactly what he's doing in that book. exactly what he's doing. If you've read his book, Plantagenet History, even Henry V, you know that he understands authorial register. He knows exactly what he's doing in Essex Dogs. And that's why I so unabashedly love it, because it's not him slumming. And it's also not him insulting me. He knows what kind of a book he's writing. Oh my God. And once you realize that, you're off to the races with Essex Dogs. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's if you read ebooks and you're worried about a gamble on it, then email me. I'll send you the ebooks, the ebook of Essex Dogs. You try it for yourself. Sean Patrick says, if Falk was that great of an actor, he should have played Columbus. I imagine him chomping on a cigar on the bridge of the Nina. I'm not saying that he isn't a great actor. I've never understood people saying, oh, he's just playing himself, when we have ample opinion. We have ample evidence of what he was like in his life, and he isn't playing himself. DP says, I'm gonna those Oxford U.S. history books in order, so Empire of Liberty is next. You don't have to read them in order. The Big Shep says, speaking of authors who haven't finished their work, Rothfuss fans are so over him that an official training video I watched when I worked at Barnes & Noble made a jab at him. But he might finish his series. He does still think about it. DP says, OMG, I read Evans' Rise of the Third Reich as well this year, and yeah, pretty much had to hard to separate it from what's going on now. I told that to frequent comment who became a friend. We're email friends, and she's never read. She read a little history. I think years and years ago she read a biography of Hitler or something like that, and she emailed me and said, I watched a video of yours recently. This was years ago. She said, I watched a video of yours recently where you said that The Rise of the Third Reich by Evans is practically a history of present day America. And I love your channel and I love emailing with you, but sometimes you do exaggerate, and I'm sorry, but you are exaggerating there. This is just an electoral cycle. And I told her, read the book. If you're a big fan of your local library, and it sounds like you have a great local library, get them to get you a copy and read the book, and then get back to me. And she did, and apologized. She was nice. MFR Claire is the single word tobacco. Don't know what that's in reference to. James and Giant Niche says, Steve, I recently saw your video on book projects and found the idea fascinating. As a former lit student, do you know any booktubers that discuss personal research and close readings of books? Not in a nice way. Everybody has reading projects on BookTube, and they'll talk about them. But personal research and close readings of books, that's not really what I see on BookTube. I don't know of any myself that do it in a palatable way. The ones that do it are doing it in a horribly pretentious way. Unless you count me. I try to stay away from that kind of detail. Manny says, besides you, I only watch different booktubers if there is a video of theirs of interest to me. I wish I had more time to watch other booktubers as regularly as you, though. But you don't miss any of my videos, I trust. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I know you don't travel much, but you need to get to Mark Richardson to drive down and pick you up so you guys can do some videos at his place. I like your chemistry together. Well, I don't travel much, and I don't know that would work anyway, since Mark is very, very busy and also has a dog. I have no idea how that dog would react to Frida, or how Frida would react to that dog. So, but thank you about the chemistry. All of our videos together were fun to do. Kevin JN says, I really love Cuba Fruit. I purchased it as an ebook and totally missed your tribute. Belated thanks to you, sir. I can give endless tribute to Cuba Fruit. Samwise says, was the sequel to Canticle for Leibowitz any good? Oh my God, no. Oh my God, no. There was a fad. It was at the tail end of a fad where everybody did sequels, and we just tried to forget about it. I work hard every day to forget that Joe Heller wrote a sequel to Catch-22. No, it was awful. Street Medic says, no smoke is good for your lungs, but if you're going to do it, you should at least pick up something that will get you high. You don't have to do it at all. It's gross for you and also for everybody around you. Suzanne Karras says, I'm wading my way through your starter kits for Rome. Thank you so much. Should I do another Rome starter kit? I've heard people say that I should break it down into periods of Rome and bear down and do starter kits for all of them. Might be a little too much Rome. Aiden says, years ago, I was turned off from BookTube because of Better Than Food and Benjamin McAvoy. Glad I eventually made it here. I can totally understand why they would turn you off from BookTube. Totally. Some Okie Dude says hello. Big Shep says, I used to watch more curated channels like Daniel Green that ended promptly in February. Now I much prefer smaller, more sincere channels. I honestly, no offense to the kid. I'm sure that I'm not sure that he's nice in public, considering the scandals. No offense to him or any of his viewers, but I don't know how anyone could watch his videos. They are so thoroughly insincere and manic and weird, and I don't know how anyone could watch them. I guess it's because he's the first person you see. Waiting at the station with a good book. Rant here. I was at Barnes & Noble's the other day, and I have been noticing more and more that historical fiction more and more ending up in nonfiction. Can we please start a movement? It's because the staff is not hired for book knowledge. They have no idea. So Sean Patrick says, in your opinion, will the beat writers disappear, or will some future scholarship bring them back some type of notoriety? I doubt they'll ever disappear. I don't know how. They're such a quintessentially American phenomenon that I don't know how much they'll appear in foreign scholarship. And future literary scholarship, you are perforce talking foreign, non-American scholarship. I don't know how much non-American scholars would be interested in the beats. DZGIN says, do you like Saga, the graphic novel? No, not particularly. Some Okie Doo says, what's wrong with Ben McAvoy? Oh, you're asking someone else. MFR Claire says, what thoughts or suggestions do you have for regarding any of these? And then there are colon, oh my God, is a list. And it's not, the list is not included. AJ Age BW says, what are your thoughts on William Gass? He's okay. He's incredibly wordy, and I'm wary of him now that he's been wholeheartedly adopted by the Dude Bros. Aiden says, what do you think of Tanazaki's Naomi? I just read it and found it incredibly funny in a very uncomfortable way. I'm a big fan of Tanizaki just in general. All of his books. Eric Zelinsky says, hi, Steve. As most of us, we come here for books, but what are your musical tastes? Where do you fit music into your day? All John Philip Sousa, all the time. Colin says, what's your opinion of the film adaptation My Fair Lady? I just watched it for the first time and absolutely loved Rex Harrison. Hilarious performance. Is there anyone who doesn't love the film adaptation of My Fair Lady? I love it. Hugo says, there are 130 people watching live. Now, that cannot be true. But we still have to wrap this up. I don't care if there are 13,000 people watching. Colin says, what's your favorite Orson Welles movie? Directed by him, I assume you mean. Do I have to say Citizen Kane? Claire says, trying again. What are your thoughts, suggestions regarding any of these? The 1619 Project. I think you can guess what my thoughts are. Before the Mayflower, War, Politics, and Revolution in Provincial Massachusetts. Oh my God. These are not for a stream. Before the Mayflower, I kind of liked a little. War, Politics, and Revolution in Provincial Massachusetts. I had no opinions on one way or another. Some Okie Dude says, I watched something earlier today and they had a copy of Crime and Punishment up for, so I guess who was blurbed on front of you, Mr. Steve Donahue. Yes, yes. Steve Bronstein says, what do you think about Malcolm Nance? Is he courageous or chemically unbalanced? There's no law that says you can't be both. He's here in America. So whether he's courageous or chemically unbalanced, he is definitely naive. Sean says, Steve, do you keep track of your reading in a database or spreadsheet or diary? Not really, no. If not, then how do you keep track of your reading with massive volumes of books that you read? It's largely memory. I have a journal. I will sometimes write my reactions in journals. I also write my reactions in reviews. But no, I don't have any memory prompts along those lines. Some Okie Dude points out he does have a website. Yes, I do. I do have a website that records a lot of my thoughts at length on books. Let's see here. Colin says, what is your overall opinion of the Romanticist movement? Did it produce any authors you hold in high esteem? Yes, it did. Romanticism? Yeah, it produced a lot of authors I held in high esteem. What do you mean? There must be a level to that question that I'm not getting. Colombian Thunder says, speaking of Dick Cavett and Columbo, his interview with cast of Cassavetes' husbands is hard to watch. I don't doubt. Sean Patrick says, Steve, in regards to a prior comment, it's like a little depressing watching Cavett because you realize how far the level of discourse has fallen in the last 50 years. Yeah. Yeah. Some Okie Dude says, fair enough. Oh, wait, you're still having this private conversation. H.P. Lovecraft says, any suggestions on a Virginia Woolf and a Henry Adams bio? Well, you start with Quentin Bell for Virginia Woolf. You'll really enjoy it, I think. Hermione Lee also wrote a great biography of Virginia Woolf, but I'd start with Quentin Bell. And for Henry Adams, you had better start with The Education of Henry Adams by Henry Adams. You had better start with that. Some Okie Dude says, to be fair, creators like Jack Edwards, it's creators like Jack Edwards who pissed me off. Okay, but I don't know if you're referring to the conversation you were having with somebody else. Hannah's Books is back. I love Brideshead and also recommend the very different The Loved One. Yeah, The Loved One would be a place to go if you don't want to get mired in to see whether or not Brideshead was a one-off for you. Some Okie Dude said, I watched The Firing Line some years ago and was shocked. Nietzsche and Wig is here. Hey, Steve, just finished reading a bunch of Jane Austen and Richard Pipes' brilliant books on the Russian Revolution. May Lenin burn in hell. Well, there's no hell, so he's not burning there. Brandon says, Steve, did you like Paul Theroux travel writings about Mexico? I think the collection was called Plain of Snakes. I don't know that I've read that one. There's quite a few Paul Theroux that I haven't read. One about Mexico doesn't ring a bell. Sam says, hi, Steve. I have noticed the use of CB, BC, CE, BCE over AD and BC annoys you. Why is it that you don't seem to have much love for Christianity either? Because Christianity is a fact, a historical fact. And it is the dividing line between that the stupid neologisms are using anyway. They're using that anyway. So it's a fact. Saying AD BC is not saying I am imposing my religion on you. It's just another stupid example of this kind of cultural fascism that I rail against anyway, whether I like the object or not. It's ridiculous. It's the fascist academy and the fascist language censors on what used to be Twitter saying, I am imposing this change on you, and let's see if you have the courage to buck it. If you do buck it, well, I'm going to have your tenure revoked. I'm going to have you mobbed and egged in the street. I'm going to make sure you never publish a paper again. So how much is it worth it to you? I've arbitrarily made this decision. I've arbitrarily changed this language. Not homeless, but unhoused. Now, if you send a paper, I'm going to do a Control F and change that word and send the paper back to you for review. And if you say change that all back, we're going to reject the paper. I hate it on many levels, no matter what I think of Christianity. Oh no, the chat jumped again. Well, the chat can't keep jumping because we've got to go. We've got to end this stream. I hate to do it, but this can't be a long stream. Let's go back to God help us. It's a lot of comments. There we go. Andrew Russell. Here, you want to come up here? Come on. Hang on a minute. Little bean drama here. Come here. Come on, you can do it. Come on. Come on, you can do it. Oh, Frida, you shouldn't get down if you need. Come on, you can do it. Come on up here. You can do it. Come on, one more try. There you go. Okay. All right. Okay, sorry. Let's see here. Andrew Russell says, what are your thoughts on Daniel Day-Lewis? I'm looking forward to seeing Anemone, but no other Oscar-worthy acting from him. Not sure what to expect. I'm not a big fan. Some Okie Dude says he's not a believer. I'll say that much. I don't know who you're talking to here or what you're talking about. So let's just move on here. Andrew Russell says, expect your milkshake drunk. Sean Patrick says, Steve, the people who fought in Vietnam on both sides are leaving the scene every day. I urge people to read at least one book about the subject. Yeah. Nietzsche and Wiggs is responding to somebody else. Colin says, you frequently mention your love of Seven Pillars of Wisdom. Do you enjoy the film adaptation, Lawrence of Arabia? Do I enjoy Lawrence of Arabia, the movie? Yeah, I do. Gus says, I just started reading C.S. Lewis' Space Trilogy. I didn't know he wrote science fiction. Any thoughts on it? It stinks. Mark says, speaking of Norton, I also bought the latest Dracula Critical Edition, but had the presence of mind to check the contents. Andrea Dworkin, thanks, but no thanks. I would be very careful. I would be very, very careful, especially with a book like Dracula. Colin says, what's your thoughts on Hope Leslie by Catherine Sedgwick? I had to read it for a literature class in college and found it a bit creaky. I don't think I know that book. Must Read More says, Cavit's interview with Richard Burton is fantastic. I agree. I try to get people to watch, but most people don't seem interested. Burton's stories about his father are wonderful. Tolstoy 111 is responding to someone else. Sean Patrick says, Steve, the question anyone is dying for you to answer, do you shower or bathe? I would love to bathe. I would love that. But I have one of those stupid modern bathtubs it's like that deep. And I'm enormous, so I cannot I cannot bathe in the bathtub. I would love to do that. But instead I shower. I would love to bathe. I don't think I would bathe only and never shower, but I would love to do that, and I can't. Nietzsche and Wig says, saw someone on the internet describe you as the Dave Hurwitz of BookTube. I approve. You just need a massive gong behind you to smash with delight when you want to introduce a great book. Where did you see me described anywhere? No one talks about me. Andrew Russell says, Steve, do you think any works on literary criticism help with reviewing books? Or are they a waste of time? They are largely a waste of time. They certainly don't help with reviewing books. No. Steve Bronstein says, have you come across Vlad Vlexer's YouTube channel? I don't know that. DP says, thoughts on Theodore Dreiser? I read Sister Carrie this year and thought it was great. I read it early spring and still think about it. Well, then his fiction might work for you. You should try his trilogy of big enormous novels if you've read Sister Carrie and liked it. I'm not that big a fan of his fiction. Some Okie Dude says, I don't think Steve thinks religion is inherently a bad thing. No, I don't at all. Unless he does, then in that case, I'm mistaken. No, I don't think it's an inherently bad thing. The only time I ever rail against it is when it makes fact claims. And sometimes bases legislation on fact claims. That's the only time I ever rail against it, not otherwise. Nietzsche and Wig is responding to somebody else. Stephen says, what is your view of The House of the Borderland by William Hope Hodgson? I think it's drastically overrated in what we call modern discourse. Some Okie Dude says, I used to watch Daniel Green back in the day. He was one of the first booktubers aside from Thomas at SFF 180, who I watched, but I just can't jive with his videos anymore. Well, yeah, most people encounter Daniel Green just first when they're looking at BookTube at all, they encounter him. And I worry about that. I worry about that as a first impression. And look at the difference. Look at the huge difference between him and Thomas at SFF 180. Thomas believes what he's saying. He knows what he's talking about. I don't believe, and he acts like a normal person. I don't believe that about Daniel Green. I don't believe any of that about Daniel Green. Alice says, hey, Steve, thanks for the Rome starter kit. I really enjoyed Adrian Goldsworthy's Caesar. Just got his book on Augustus. Would like to know what you think of it. I will write a review of it, I imagine. Nietzsche and Wig says, I used to watch a lot of Carolyn Mary Reed's really lovely channel. Not sure I know that. Colin says, do you ever cook for yourself or for any friends? I never cook for friends. I do cook for myself. Very simple stuff. Very simple, just rice. Must Read More says, it bothers me when people name 2 or 3 huge insincere channels and use that to generalize about all of BookTube when they haven't even scratched the surface. I know. Me too. Colombian Thunder says, still waiting on a medieval history starter kit. Oh, I've made one. I'm sure I have. Sean Patrick says, I'm not trying to troll here. Honestly, I've never read Lolita. Is it creepy? I mean, it's about that, isn't it? Okay, you're not trying to troll, but you are asking, as an adult, whether or not Lolita is creepy, which certainly sounds like a trolling question. It is creepy. Big Shep says, Daniel Green was the first channel I found, and I had been teetering on the edge of unsubscribing anyway when the scandal broke, and that was enough of a push for me. Nietzsche and Wig says, I didn't know Dave Horowitz died. A shame he went from being a far-left nutter to a Trump-loving nutter. I loved Radical Son. Yeah. Aiden responding to someone else. Steve Bronstein says, what do you think about the sentiment of many observers that leaving the country is weak and we should stay and contribute to an opposition? There will be no opposition. There will be no opposition. It is a lunatic, delusional. It is a delusional viewpoint. There will be no opposition. If you are an American listening to me now, you should wake the F up, realize your assets, and emigrate. And if you're thinking that's cowardly and I won't leave my loved ones behind, then take your loved ones with you. It takes an enormous amount of time to get the paperwork ready. You don't have much time. The capital of this country is under fascist military occupation. What more do you need? Anyway, it's a dumb. The observers who say that are being stupidly naive. you're not going to be Che Guevara. There is not going to be any opposition. You're going to be black bagged into an unmarked van, and no one's even going to see it or know that it happened. That's it. That's the extent of it. So don't. Anyway. Alice L says, by the way, on the topic of Richard III, though I don't like the White Queen TV series, but Aneurin Barnard is hot. There's a White Queen TV series, and it has someone hot in it that Steve doesn't know about. Kindly send me the link so I don't lose this in the chat. Andrew, please tell me that the hot person doesn't play Richard. Oh my God. Oh, please tell me. Andrew says, is responding to some Okie dude. Big Shep says, I think a lot of people around my age, Gen Z, crave sincerity, but they don't even realize they've been deprived of it. I think that is true. I think Gen Z does crave sincerity. They don't know where to look for it. They're not getting it from their parents, that's for sure. They're not getting it from lawsuit-terrified teachers at school. And so many people, so many monsters online are skilled at simulating sincerity. It's terrifying. But they know that Gen Z wants that. So it's no wonder that when Gen Z people encounter unlikely people like me or Mark Richardson when he had a channel, or David Murphy, or Jason Harrigan, or when they see sincerity, they automatically latch onto it. That makes total sense to me, regardless of the shape that it comes in. Nietzsche and Wig says, Aneurin Barnard is indeed hot. I do not know this person's name. I hope we are talking about a man, because that would be gross otherwise. Some Okie dude says, who are you talking about? Daniel Green, you mean? Oh, you're talking to someone else. Okay. Some Okie dude says, very impressive memory, Mr. Donahue. Colin says, do you have a recommended books about the golden age of piracy? I have plenty. I've read plenty of books on the subject. I don't know how many of them I'd recommend. Joshua Crebo's here. Hi, Steve. I'm glad I caught your stream. I used to watch both Daniel Green and Benjamin McAvoy. Then I discovered your channel and realized BookTube could be a lot more interesting and genuine. Well, you also started making videos of your own, and we're all luckier for that. Sean Patrick is back. Steve, I think the movie Around the World in 80 Days is great until they get to American West. Is the book the same in that sense? No, the book is wonderful. The best hour you'll ever read, aside from maybe Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Kevin Jan says, Steve, honest opinion, should I collect physical books again? I recently moved to Florida, and my personal books on Springsteen and Broadway play are my few physical possessions. If you read ebooks, I don't see the reason why you would ever go back. If I ever have to get TNT blasted out of Hyde Cottage, I'm going to get rid of almost every physical book. I'll keep 100 of them. Not 5,000 of them. I'll keep 100 of them. Eric Zelinsky is back. Another music question. Have you ever done a music starter kit, music biography kit? I wouldn't do a music starter kit because that's not books, but I could do a musical biography. Someone actually suggested that in an email to me. Street Medic says, I'm reading the Annals of America and up to the 3rd volume, and reading the primary sources is a lot different from reading someone else's interpretation of them is eye-opening. Oh, the chat jumped. I should probably leave it jumped because we have to end this. We can't just keep going. I don't have the oh, there we go. Okay. Fortunately, there are a lot of private conversations going on here that I don't need to worry about. Nietzsche and Wig says, I have the Cuban Trump song stuck in my head. Oh my God, I will vote. Iden says, I've been reading Margaret Reynolds' The Sappho Companion and learned of Alexander Pope's character assassination against Sappho. It's a shame, but I guess I can forgive him. Colin says, what do you think of the new Naked Gun movie? I thought Liam Neeson was brilliant in it. It is a pure travesty. It is blasphemy. You are asking me what I think of the new Sistine Chapel ceiling. Sean Patrick says, Steve, is anyone currently writing Michener's type of big books about geographic locations? I don't think so. Rutherford came the closest. Some Okie dude says, well, end the damn thing. Yeah, I will. I'll get around to it. Manny says, I just find Benjamin McAvoy better than Food and channels like those to be incredibly dull. I feel like I could predict literally everything they will say about any particular book. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, you can. Ryan says, hi, Steve. The community on BookTube happens for me, not a creator, largely on Discord. A bunch of chatty Cathys posting about books all day long. Claire says, hi, this is Michelle and Goldie. I was listening a couple of days ago and heard the beginning of topic, but not the end, and hope you can fill me in. So have you heard of James Michener? Alexandra says, a starter kit about the end of the Roman Republic would be timely. A little too depressing, probably. Steven says, it's amazing how far down President debates when you see the Kennedy-Nixon debate. I saw it on YouTube, and it was so informative compared to those in the last. We haven't had any actual debates in 10 years or more. Some Okie Dude says, anyway, I have to go. I'm doing a podcast myself in a bit, so keep up the good work, Steve. Probably doing a podcast with a bunch of people who wouldn't cross the street to put me out if I were on fire. What a change that must be. Aiden says, what do you think of a visit from the Goon Squad? I don't like it. I absolutely hated it, but I'm the vast majority, and I might be missing something. I don't think I'm missing anything. I'm in the minority too. Street Medic says, I think the common era should start from the first permanent establishment of communication between the old and new worlds, but that would destroy the current calendar. Yes, it would. Michael Flynn says, LARB ran a piece against hybridism. I know, I saw that. Naming Hirsch 07769, the recognition, solenoid, the tunnel, parallel stories, the loser, gravity's rainbow. Do you agree with these works are bro or no? They've all been appropriated by Dude Bro. Some of those books are really good. Parallel Stories is excellent. Gravity's Rainbow, of course, is excellent. But yeah, I saw the piece. Andrew Russell says, have you ever reviewed a novel written by a fellow booktuber? No. Alice L says, also waiting for a War of the Roses starter kit. Colin says, what do you think of Albert Einstein as an author? Is he worth reading? Not particularly, no. Let's see here. AJ says, hi, Steve. I wonder what you think of Wired by Bob Woodward. I didn't particularly like it. Claire says, I like Theodore Dreiser, but I might be reading between the lines and seeing the misery of Midwestern depression and oppression in his writing, the slide into the abyss. Nietzsche and Wig says, sorry, Steve, but the hot person plays Richard. Oh, God, you're kidding me. This aneurysm person that you're talking about, head aneurysm, plays, we have a hot Richard. Oh, God. Please tell me that he is physically misshapen. At least physically misshapen. The chat jumped. All right, well, we're going to read up from the bottom of the chat because we have to wrap this up. So I'm going to miss some questions here. I'm very sorry about that. Well, no, I can't do that because it keeps moving. Oh God. All right, let's just put the spurs to this thing and see if we can't. Oh, God help us. I really appreciate you all being here, but this makes it impossible. Where were we? DP says, Steve, do you watch the Red Sox at all? They've been fun this year. They have been fun this year, but I deny all rumors that I watched them. CB Bronstein says, what's the best strategy to stay safe if leaving the country is not an option? You cannot stay safe if leaving the country is an option. And you cannot stay safe in a fascism. There's no such thing as a fascism that leaves you alone. Also, since fascism is on the rise worldwide, isn't choosing where to go also a gamble? This is a sure thing. A gamble is better than a sure thing. Street Medic says the calendar should be truly based on astronomy, not historical. That's okay, great. It isn't, though. Steve Bronstein says, which English-speaking countries do you think are the best to immigrate to? You should be researching this. Your paperwork should be well underway. It takes a long time to get this paperwork done. There are plenty that would be worth the risk. Portugal, the Netherlands, Germany. There are plenty that would be worth the risk. Over a sure thing, this is a sure thing. The capital of this country is under military occupation. That reading guy says, ooh, what's the topic tonight? We're wrapping up. That's what the topic is, Johnny Come Lately. Oh, no, wait. I lost the chat again. Good Lord. This has become a chaotic mess. I blame that reading guy. God, we were at that reading. Oh, there we go. Okay. Street Medic says, isn't Benjamin McAvoy an AI creation? I have often thought that. Manny says, wait, someone made a Naked Gun movie in 2025. That's pretty strange. They did. Yeah. Ricky Gervais says, I love your new historical fiction recommendations video. I just borrowed the Yiddish Policeman's Union from my local library because of it. So you borrowed something that wasn't on the list that I praised. That reading guy says, I quit my job at the box factory, so that means I can write more. I mean, watch more Steve videos. Yes, indeed. Tolstoy 111 says, John Buchan was born 150 years ago today. Thanks, Fact Boy. Colombian Thunder says, have a good night, Steve. Yes, I will. Colin says, what's your opinion of Confederacy of Dunces? would you ever do a New Orleans starter kit? I will never do a New Orleans starter kit, but I like Confederacy of Dunces. Manny says no. He's incredibly hot in the series as well. Will Richard, a hot Richard. That reading guy says I should ease things on the chat by only reading the super chats. Aiden says I only read the people with crowns. AJ says big ups to the great Steve Donahue. Thanks for all the hours of informative entertainment you've given me. Yeah, I want to mention that there were 4 videos today in addition to the Steve stream. But anyway, we have reached the end, and I want to thank you all for being here. This did indeed perk up my spirits, which is just what I was hoping. And I learned a lot about what you think about BookTube and how you approach BookTube. That's wonderful. So we'll do this again. I don't know when, but we'll do this again. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube. So, man, that did perk up.